door carrying wild greens harvested from the nearby woods. "We found salad," her daughter, NAZIRMOREH, shouted, tossing the basket onto the counter. She ran back outside with her brother Aliftab, their dirt-stained purple monastery robes flying behind them. Shakina observed her children experiencing freedom for the first time in their lives. It was the autumn of 2010, and Shakina and her 5 children, ages 18 to 25, had taken refuge in the home of an acquaintance in Eureka Springs. For the past 12 years, they had lived on a 100-acre wilderness compound 36 miles southwest of Yellville, down a long, remote dirt road. They were part of an 8-member religious order called the NAZIR Order of the Purple Veil, and lived in what they called the Nahziryah Monastic community. Because they were required to wear purple head to toe, locals referred to them simply as the Purple People. 2 weeks earlier, Shakina Kedem had packed up a few possessions into a commune jeep and, along with 2 sons, Niraj and Aliftab, and daughter, NAZIRMOREH, set out to retrieve her 2 missing sons, Rom and Quadish. Their father, who called himself the Reverend Baba NAZIRMOREH Kadmiel Ben Kedem, had sent the 2 young men out of state to stay with another community member for being defiant. Shakina was forced to turn around when she realized the few $100s of cash she carried wouldn't support a long journey. She decided to go to Eureka Springs, rather than return to the compound. There, David Rowell, a local carpenter, opened his home to the family. He'd previously met the Purple People selling merchandise in Eureka. Rom and Quadish soon joined their mother and siblings. "And that's how we came back into the world," Shakina said in a recent interview. "We were like refugees in our own country." 8 years later, Shakina, who is 56 and living in Fort Smith, is sharing the story of the harrowing life she and her family endured under the NAZIR Order of the Purple Veil for more than 28 years. And though almost a decade has passed since she fled the compound, the trauma continues. Just last year, Quadish Eri Kedem and Aliftab Amrita Mukti Kedem took their own lives. "People look at us and have no clue what we've been through," Shakina said. She detailed her experience in 5 hours of recorded interviews and hundreds of texts and emails over the past year. The Bronx, NY, native first learned about the commune in 1981 at age 18, when she encountered a handsome young Nazi man proselytizing outside Carnegie Hall in Manhattan. She fell in love, abandoned a budding career as a vegan baker, performance artist and fashion illustrator, and followed him to a backwoods Mississippi trailer camp near the town of DeKalb. KB. Kedem, along with a dozen followers, mostly women and children. Kedem established the NAZIR Order of the Purple Veil in the early 1960s, according to a website maintained by the group. Gaunt, with large, brown eyes and long, black dreadlocks, Kedem was a black Hebrew Israelite, a name given to various small African American religious groups who believe themselves to be the descendants of a lost tribe of Israel. Black Hebrew Israelite beliefs and practices vary widely, but some adopt Hebrew names, practice polygamy, reject birth control and keep strict vegan diets. Kedem, however, forged his own spiritual path. He preached an asceticism derived from the Essenes, an ancient Jewish sect. Later, he mixed in an amalgam of Eastern contemplative mysticism. "It was beautiful at first," Shakina said, remembering her early days as an initiate at the spiritual commune, meditating and preparing vegan meals together, gardening and harvesting wild foods, washing our clothes in the creek, playing music and chanting, making crafts to sell. She smiled faintly, adjusting a purple scarf around her neck, a remnant of her former spiritual regalia. Things changed in 1982, after her fiancé was killed in a car wreck along with Kedem's second wife, Ima Gadala Kedem, and 2 of their sons. Shakina stayed on with the commune to help raise the Reverend's 4 remaining children, then ages 8 to 17. There was an attraction, she acknowledged. He was strict, but he could also be loving and playful. 2 years later, the Reverend sealed their relationship with spiritual vows, but insisted she remain his disciple, and he, her master. She agreed. She had just turned 21. He was 46. Over the next several years, 5 babies followed. Shakina was forbidden to mother them, she said. Children born into the group were communally raised by women who were with the group off and on and who were rigidly controlled by Kedem. In 1985, the commune relocated to New Orleans, where Kedem opened a bookstore and gift shop called the Veil of Truth Center for Metaphysical and Esoteric Learning on Ponce de Leon Street. Shakina, her 5 children, several of Gadola's children and others lived in close quarters inside a small apartment in the back of the shop. The women and older children spent their days in silence making crafts to sell in the store and on the streets. In the late 1990s, Kedem's paranoia over an impending Y2K apocalypse drove him to move the order one more time. He purchased 80 acres in Marion County in 1999. His family and occasional visitors dug gardens, planted orchards, erected cabins, a main lodge and workshop, and painted everything purple, their signature color, one Kedem believed promoted enlightenment. But, by then, communal life had become hopelessly bleak, Shakina said. It started back in New Orleans, where Kedem began to force members to physically worship him and prostrate themselves at every encounter, foreheads pressed to ground, or suffer severe consequences. He would strike, in the face, especially around the eyes, she said, pointing to a dark permanent scar on the white of her left eye. He strangled us. Not only me, but the children. And he would often do this, she gestured, placing her hand over her mouth and nose, almost suffocating them. In the last year, a half-dozen other former members of Nahziryah Monastic community have come forward on the record, describing life under the purple veil. They have said they were forbidden to speak, even amongst themselves. When addressed by Kedem, they had to respond in Sagol, a Hebrew-based language he had invented. Meals were limited to lunch and supper, the children given only a protein drink for breakfast. Everyone, including the young members, had to meditate for an hour at dawn, noon and dusk. If the children fell asleep or stole food, they would be punished, Shakina said. The violence would be described as extreme, she said, her eyes welling with tears. He would lay the children out on the ground, and beat their backs with boards, she said. Retaliating only made things much worse for everyone, Shakina said. Leaving, with no resources, seemed impossible. Barred from seeking conventional medical care, she tended to her children's fractures and wounds using splints and natural remedies. Family members who spoke on the record revealed scars on their heads, arms, backs and faces. This was my home, since I was a teenager, Shakina said when asked why she stayed. This was all I knew. I had taken lifetime vows under the Nazir veil to be a renunciate. To cope with the pain, she would pretend the abuse was a form of severe training a disciple might receive from a strict Eastern master. Even when she left the compound in 2010, she believed at first it would be a short leave of absence. At Nahziryah Monastic Community, everyone worked 7 days a week cleaning, cooking, growing food and chopping firewood. The older children and women manufactured spiritual merchandise and crafts to support Kedem. They crocheted clothing and hats and fabricated incense burners and jewelry, which the women silently sold at festivals, farmers' markets and online for income. The children, however, weren't allowed to leave the compound and grew up with no contact with the outside world. Janja Lalich is a professor emerita of sociology at California State University Chico who operates the Cult Research and Information Center. Once a cult member herself, she's written several popular books on the subject. Members of cults don't fight back, she said, because of the intensity of the indoctrination. Essentially no one joins a cult, Lalich said. They will get drawn in by the message or leader. More than 2/3 get recruited by friends, family or co-workers. They are slowly brought in until they are convinced by messages of enlightenment, financial success and physical improvement. Multiple phone calls and emails to Kedem seeking comment about the abuse allegations were not returned. He did mail a packet of spiritual paraphernalia, including bumper stickers, CDs and a written response in purple text on white paper. Peace be to Jacqueline Froelich.